Yeah. So for a long time, people would ask me why I'm passionate about climate change and climate action, as I've been since I was 9 years old. And for a long time, I didn't know what to say, but what I realize now is that my story really begins a long time before I was even born. That my ancestors, my people, began to arrive on this continent in the 1620s. And what I know of those people is that they went on to be first settlers, first arrivals and colonizers to towns in Connecticut and Massachusetts and New York. Just one man, Reverend Adam Blakeman, was the first settler of Stratford, Connecticut, which he arrived 1 year after the Pequot Massacre, where 400 men, women, and children were burned in their village alive. And my father was born in that same county, very near to the site of that same massacre, 300 and some years later. And that county also went on to be one of the wealthiest places in the United States. And so what I know now is that all of the many privileges that I was raised with, of which there were so many blessings and ways that my family was able to provide safety and education for me, what I know now is that that is on the backs of that land theft and slavery and genocide of people of the Pequot Nation, Narragansett, the people of the Connecticut seashore. And for me, that story, that family history has become an inextricable part of why I do this work. And what we know is that the mindset that brought about climate change, that has allowed the pillage of our earth, is the same mindset that arrived here with my ancestors, that allowed them to see non-European people as less than human, that allowed them to see the land as something that could be owned and taken and extracted from. And today as well, we see that hundreds of years later, that the impact of those sins, those extractive notions of how to be in relationship with this land, is coming back to impact the people that have least caused it, and that the impacts of climate change are landing on Black, Brown, Indigenous people first and worst, long before my family, who can afford to move or do whatever it takes. I was pretty young, I think about 12, when my dad told me that he was gonna sell our house due to rising sea levels. And so my people aren't ignorant of this crisis, they just have the privilege to be able to respond in a really different way. And yeah, particularly when I think about reparations, I just know that the resources and the privileges that have come my way are only mine by chance of birth, and beyond that, that they are stolen, that that land, that wealth, that labor has been stolen over hundreds of years now into my family from the families of others, from underpaid workers, from enslaved people, from land that wasn't theirs to start with. And so I know that my spiritual work is to just know that it is not mine, that I just have a responsibility to complete the circle through returning what was stolen. And yeah, it's a big vision, and I can't tell you that I've given away everything that I own right now, and I definitely haven't. And I know that it's lifelong work to deconstruct these ideas of deserving and what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and that we got here through each of our own hard work. But I was very much raised with that mindset, so I know there's the lifelong internal work and the lifelong external work of building relationship across lines of difference. For me, I believe that reparations, that are part of kind of building the ground that will allow relationships across lines of difference that will get us to a more just world. And so that's been my work in the past few years, has been to, I live in interracial, cross-class, intergenerational community, intentional community, and I've been working with my family to give away some of the money that was set aside for me to go to college. And my goal ultimately is to give away all of my inherited wealth, and currently I give away 10% of my income, both to grassroots movement building and just to people in need, whether friends or people I meet on the street. And my goal is to ramp that up to 50% of my income. And those commitments feel like the smallest thing I can do. Like I said, they build the ground, and it's only a tiny percentage of what was ever taken can be returned. And moving these resources is just one small part of that I feel a responsibility to do so strongly. So this conversation matters a lot to me, and I don't know you people of the video, but I welcome anyone to be in dialogue with me about this. If you're in a situation where you have access to more resources than you need, whether through inheritance or through an income that supports you beyond a basic standard of living, and those questions of how to move those resources back to where they come from are huge, and we can't do this alone, and we have to do it in partnership with the people who need those resources, and we have to not give them all that labor and support one another.
And Anthony, I want to ask you, since I've been able to get your attention for 5 minutes, why is it important for you personally, and also for the network, this focus on reparations? Racial healing involves so many different components. We just heard from Morgan. She spoke from her family ancestry perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that for there to be like true racial healing, that means that everyone will be on equal footing, equal opportunity to pursue, to live, to breathe clean air, to have like clean water, and to be able to take part in whatever, not necessarily the capitalist system, that they want to with ease, and certainly not be suppressed by it disproportionately. And so, when slavery, which is what built what's known today as the United States of America, occurred, there were a lot of things that will never be able to be repaired. First and foremost, like bloodlines from original African nations and tribes and people and nations and cultures were cut off essentially forever. And that remains, to this day. People might be able to, in the advent of DNA testing, figure out what region of Africa they came from, maybe, but they don't know the village, they don't know their people. That's irreparable. And then there's this notion of free labor, and not just, picking crops like cotton, but what's commonly lost, and we also have to talk about it, is the labor of women slaves who were forced to have children, forced fecundity, I call it, and there's a reason why we call it going into labor. It's laborious, and their kids were not seen as children but as property. So that even the mothers, after going through this labor, it was just a transactional process, because she could potentially not even be able to get attached to the child because it's just property to be sold off. Like similar, I hate to say it, to breeders who with dogs. Like the mother doesn't get to keep all the puppies. Most of those puppies are going to be sold to people, and she will never see them again. That might not be, you might not be able to put a full price on that, but what we do know is that what that started was a culture of white supremacy in this nation that has, systemically oppressed, institutionalized, oppressed Black people. That idea that they were property has never fully been eviscerated from the consciousness, even though we don't call them that. Excuse me. And so I think that reparations is about healing in the sense of like wrongs have been done, wounds have been opened up. I see reparations as sewing, those wounds, stitching them up, putting, band-aid over them. There's always going to be a scar, right? That's like, it can't be undone. And maybe that scar is good because it reminds us. It reminds me of I'm amazed. Germany, as a matter of fact, Equal Justice Initiative, which created the National Lynching Memorial in Alabama, studied how they deal with Holocaust in Germany, the scar that's still there. They haven't removed any of the signs of Nazism, the things that were on street names and whatnot, so that people see and don't forget. And the scar, they don't want to get like plastic surgery and remove the scar. They want the people to know this is a part of our nation. So that's what reparations does. That's, I think, the moral element of it. And then in terms of the financial, end of it, it's just that like social programs that are colorblind is still not, it might lift everybody up, but it's not like, this people lift up here and these people lift up there. What just happens is the existing gap
Remains.
lifts. Right. So it's just the full gap that lifts. And what we're trying to do is get rid of that gap. Reparations is the best way to do that. No guarantee of what people, so we can't think of it, if you just give people money, they'll spend it. That's not the point of it. We don't get in the business of worrying about what anybody does with their money. That's your business, and hopefully you have a good enough, healthy relationship with money. That's a separate thing from reparations. We have no right to tell people how to spend their money, but it's about having the chance to, if you want to do that, you have equal footing for house, education, food, etc., that is honoring the stewardship that Black people, Africans, descendants represent for this land. And I think just along with indigenous people, Black people who have been here for centuries are stewards of this land, but they have never been compensated for, the oppression, the torture, the apartheid, the murder, and then of course the free labor. So, I mean, I think that without that, there will never be any full racial healing. So it's not about asking people individually to do with less. It's really about this government and the people to really understand who benefited from all of this oppression at the expense of mainly Black and indigenous people, that they have their station that they do now. And even just having the discussion is healing for white people when it's done in a way where it's like, it's not you that owes me this, right? It's a larger systemic thing that you are a part of. You didn't create it. You might not have anything to do with it, but you benefit from it.
Yeah.
And so really to make us conscious.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.